When sequels, one-offs, restarts, and remakes have all come and gone, what was left for the Halloween franchise but to wipe the slate clean and bring back what fans had loved most? From 2018 through 2022, the Halloween franchise found its biggest box office successes ever with director David Gordon Green's Reboot Trilogy, bringing back Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode for a new story that wiped away everything but John Carpenter's original classic. No more long-lost siblings, no more Cult of Thorn, no hidden families, no hellbilly rampages. In their place was a film that followed aftermath and retribution 40 years after A Night of Terror. But the two films that followed would attempt to make the story of The Shape into a far more complex journey. For all its attempts to start over and breathe new life into the franchise, Halloween, Halloween Kills, and Halloween Ends are strangely indebted to the 10 films that came before, taking the many successes and mistakes made over the previous half-century of movies and cramming them into only 3 films, turning what was once a massive return into one of the most divisive stories in the franchise. With this reboot trilogy now fully complete and with no sequels to come, what are these 3 films trying to say about both Michael Myers and the nature of trauma? And where does the guiding vision behind these requels both wonderfully succeed and disastrously fall short? This is David Gordon Green's Halloween Reboot Trilogy, Michael Myers' Modern Mess. If you've been keeping up with my long-running video series on the Halloween franchise, then you might know that we last left off with Rob Zombie's Reboot Duology, and while I am a big fan of Zombie's Halloween 2, the box office underperformance of that movie left franchise owner Malika Akkad in a difficult situation, and with no one wanting the reboot timeline to continue after that, the franchise was left in a tough spot. It would be nearly a decade until the next Halloween film, but that wasn't for lack of trying. After a brief attempt to continue the zombie movies with Halloween 3D, Akkad considered so many different pitches, including Halloween 3.0, which acts as a continuation of the Carpenter original and replaces Halloween 2 in canon, a Platinum Dunes reboot with 2 killers on a simultaneous spree, a reboot trilogy plan that has Loomis as the star, Laurie dead by the end of Part 1, and a Part 3 that has hundreds of shaped duplicates on the loose, and the reveal that there's a Halloween multiverse. Insane. But the only one that got close to being made was Halloween Returns in 2015, written by Patrick and Marcus Dunstan. In a move that will soon become familiar, Returns removes Halloween 2 from canon. Michael is quickly caught after the original, but 10 years later, the Shape survives his execution and escapes. The stars here are a newly introduced deputy and doctor that captured him on Halloween night, with Laurie only a footnote and Loomis returning in the post-credits scene. So it's both an alternate Halloween 2 and an alternate Halloween 4. The film was announced and placed into pre-production in 2015, but delayed several times as Akkad disagreed with Dimension's plans to shoot the film in Serbia, which would have not looked like Haddonfield at all. Then, on December 28, 2015, Dimension lost the rights to Halloween after 20 years due to surpassing the 5-year limit between sequels needed to keep the rights, reverting them to the now Weinstein-less Miramax. With the franchise up for grabs, it was officially announced on May 24, 2016, that Blumhouse Productions and Miramax would be co-financing a new film, with Universal Pictures distributing. By 2016, I would say that Blumhouse getting involved with the Halloween franchise was not really a surprise. While the studio had originally been founded in 2000, it really wasn't until 2009 that they came to prominence with the debut of Paranormal Activity. Afterward, franchises like Insidious, Sinister, The Purge, and Creep, along with one-offs like Get Out and Hush, kept them at the top of the box office, using one very specific strategy: be made for cheap, have an easily marketable hook, and make lots of profits. Halloween would be the biggest property ever worked on by the studio, and still is to this day, so there was clearly a lot of pressure that came with it. Which is why the choice to have David Gordon Green, at this point mostly known for either indie dramas like George Washington and Undertow, or stoner comedies like Pineapple Express and Your Highness, and Danny McBride, best known for stealing the show in those comedies, to make the movie. But Green and McBride specifically pitched their take on the film to Carpenter and producer Jason Blum, looking to capture the original film's essence and continue it on in a fresh way, with Carpenter impressed and stating, "They get it." With Jamie Lee Curtis soon on board as a returning Laurie Strode, once again waiting long enough since Halloween Resurrection to stop swearing off being in another one of these things and continue on in her Ric Flair retirement tour of Halloween, and the film ignoring everything except for the original movie, work was underway. My man John Carpenter is back too, not just serving as a consultant, but composing the score alongside son Cody Carpenter and surrogate son Daniel Davies. Of course, I'm sure John was happy about finally getting some of that money he felt he was owed for decades of films, but the Halloween 2018 score absolutely rips. Pulsing with synths, ripping into heavy metal strings, and making the film into a propulsive, intense experience that elevates this entire thing. According to Carpenter, Blum came to him after Blumhouse got the rights, saying, "He came to me and said that the movie is going to be made now, whether we like it or not. He said, 'Do you want to be involved? I suggest you come aboard and do the music and sort of act as the Godfather and go from there.' And I said, 'Okay, I'll do that. That'd be fun.' That's how it started. I thought it was a pretty good idea. At first I wasn't sure, but the more I thought about it, I thought, this could be a lot of fun."
Do you know that I pray every night that he would escape?
What the hell did you do that for?
So I can kill him.
Simply titled Halloween. Don't love it when sequels just use the same name as the original again. The film picks up in 2018, 40 years after Michael Myers first escaped and terrorized Haddonfield, and reveals that in the time since, Laurie Strode has become a paranoid survivalist, which led to her losing parental rights to her daughter Karen, played by Judy Greer, and having a strained relationship with her daughter Allison, played by Andy Matichek. But when a couple of no-good British true crime podcasters stir up trouble in Haddonfield and the asylum holding and imprisoned Michael Myers, the Shape escapes and returns to kill on Halloween night, leading to a showdown between Laurie's family and the embodiment of evil that has haunted them for decades. Given that Green's film is removing Halloween 2 from its canon, the film is actually making one of the boldest choices made by any movie in the franchise.
Wasn't it her brother who, cold-blooded mutilated all those teenagers?
No, that's just a bit that some people made up to make him feel better, I think.
Laurie and Michael being siblings, introduced in 2, is basically the cornerstone for every movie that came after. It's why Jamie Lloyd in 4, 5, and 6 is the center of the story. It's why Michael comes after Laurie in H2O. It's made part of the remake from the very beginning. By having Laurie and Michael no longer be related, the entire concept of the horror of Halloween is reverted back to Carpenter's approach in the original. The Shape of the original is purely, simply evil. Emotionless, motiveless, and violent. The tragedy of Laurie and her friends is that they fall into his focus by accident. Making them brother and sister was a decision by Carpenter to give Halloween 2 a reason for existing, and in turn it was able to power decades of films. But removing the familial connection also gives this reboot trilogy its biggest challenge. If Michael has no connection to Laurie, why would he target her? And the answer is, he doesn't. And because he has no natural interest in going after the Strode family, the movie has to force him into a confrontation, leading to the character of Dr. Sartan, the so-called New Loomis, who has been studying Michael and is secretly crazy, letting him escape and eventually driving him to Laurie's compound, which is kinda silly. On one hand, these movies have always been weaker for not having Donald Pleasance as Loomis and could use a replacement. On the other, this is one of those times where you can really feel the gears of the script turning to get the plot to where it needs to be.
Say something.
Removing everything but the original also wipes away decades of kills and a super high body count, and in turn turns Michael Myers into a small-time serial killer that took out a handful of people and was caught that same night. So that means Halloween 2018 can't use decades of continuity to build up the legend of Michael Myers, but is still inherently trading on the horror and reputation of the many films it wiped away, which I think it honestly does a pretty good job at through its framing of the Shape and his kills here. And those kills are brutal, blunt, and the type of no-frill approach created by Carpenter in the original. While the film takes a while to get going, hitting Halloween night at about the midpoint, once it revs up the engine, it really doesn't slow down. And I think Green, McBride, and co-writer Jeff Fradley do a really good job at balancing character work with slasher thrills, building up relationships like the 3 generations of Strode women, Allison's fractured romance with boyfriend Cameron, and the way Michael impacts them all as simply a presence before slamming them into the shape. James Jude Courtney does a really great job as Michael, making the character intimidating in action, but also making him a still, emotionless being when pursuing or observing, with original Michael stepping in for a few scenes as a nice touch. Michael's mask is also really great here. Obviously, a lot has been made over the years by fans and myself over just how impossible it seemed for any Halloween sequel to properly replicate the mask of the original, with some, like 4, being really bad, and others, like the remake, having a really good take, but the reboot mask is easily the best since the original. It's not just that it's very close to the first mask, but that designer Christopher Nilsson created a mask that didn't necessarily have realistic decomposition, but that appropriately reflected the aging and stress at the center of the story, making Michael and Laurie into reflections of one another. Ultimately, Halloween 2018 is telling a more intimate story, especially compared to its sequels. While Michael does carve his way through Haddonfield in what I think is the film's best scene, in an unbroken take through multiple homes and between a stream of trick-or-treaters, this is the story of Laurie and her family confronting the evil that broke them apart across decades. And it makes for an incredibly satisfying conclusion, with Laurie becoming like the Shape in her own hunt, and both Karen and Allison finding their own strength to take the boogeyman down.
Gotcha.
Halloween 2018 is a solid movie at the start, picks up speed in its second act, and then finishes with an incredible finale that puts it as easily one of my favorites of the franchise, because the characters and horror blend so well together by the end. Its conclusion, with the Strodes locking Michael in the basement trap and burning the house down around him, are just open-ended enough for a sequel, but taken on its own, Halloween 2018 is a really satisfying bookend to the original. One important note on Green & Company's approach to reviving Halloween is that sequels were baked into the plan, but the approach changed, with McBride saying, "We were going to shoot 2 of them back to back, then we were like, let's not get ahead of ourselves. This could come out and everyone could hate us and we'd never work again. So let's not have to sit around for a year while we wait for another movie to come out that we know people aren't going to like." Well, Halloween 2018 was a massive hit, making $259 million against its $10 million budget and becoming the most successful film in the franchise by hundreds of millions of dollars. It really was a matter of releasing just the right film at just the right time for an audience that was hungry for a new Michael story. And while, yes, of course, we already had H2O to give us a Laurie Strode continuation, the 2018 reboot is much more along the lines of a modern horror requel than the previous version, and providing a nice blend of more aggressive modern horror and classic slasher thrills that just clicked with audiences. In its wake, movies like Scream, Candyman, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and more all attempted to create their own legacy sequel, with the older generation returning for a final confrontation and a new generation of survivors, with some extremely mixed results. As for Halloween itself, with the film a massive success, work was underway on sequels in 2019, with screenwriter Scott Teems brought alongside McBride and Green to work on these movies. And by June of 2019, Universal Pictures officially announced Halloween Kills, with a release date of October 16, 2020, and Halloween Ends, with a release of October 15, 2021. Well, you might already see where this is going, because while filming began in September of 2019, with a plan to shoot both movies at the same time, only Kills ended up being shot. And then the COVID-19 pandemic hit in early 2020, with Universal and Blumhouse officially pushing both films back by a year. And that brings us to easily the most divisive film of this trilogy.
Do it! You want your mask? Come and get it!
I'm coming for you, Michael.
Eventually released on October 15th, 2021, Halloween Kills is a bigger, more aggressive, more violent film that is looking to turn Michael back into the supernatural figure of evil he once was. But it's also looking to comment on the nature of hatred, paranoia, and mob justice in America. It's a big task for any movie to handle, and, well, it doesn't really succeed at any of it. Picking up immediately where the previous film ended, Halloween Kills keeps Myers' spree going by having the Shape escape from the blaze due to some unfortunately very helpful firefighters, going on an escalating rampage across town. And with Haddonfield now aware of Myers being on the loose, the town is stirred up into a violent mob led by Tommy Doyle, played by Anthony Michael Hall, the child babysat by Laurie on that fateful Halloween night, now looking to protect his town. Oh, and of course Paul Rudd played him as a conspiracy theorist in Curse of Michael Myers, but Rudd just looks too young to be playing him 40 years later here. Violence creates paranoia, creating more violence in an endless cycle as we go deeper and deeper into Halloween night. If I say Halloween Kills, you say... And yeah, this movie essentially became a meme as soon as it was released because of how many times every single character says that dang phrase. Don't believe me? Hit the montage.
But evil dies tonight.
Evil dies tonight! Evil dies tonight!
Evil dies tonight!
All right. Evil dies tonight! God damn it, Brackett!
Strangely, Halloween Kills is repeating the cardinal sin of Halloween 2. Both movies take place the same night as the first, take Laurie to Haddonfield Memorial Hospital, and have her unconscious for half the movie. What are we doing here? So this ends up really being Karen and Tommy's movie, with Karen the voice of reason that gives into mob violence, and Tommy being the embodiment of the town leading said violence. An attack on an escaped mental patient that is so obviously not Michael attempts to really drive home the evil of a mob, but it's so exaggerated that it doesn't work at all for me. Meanwhile, Laurie is sidelined because of her injuries, which the movie chooses to make realistically painful and debilitating, and reconnects with Sheriff Deputy Frank Hawkins, played by Will Patton, who was definitely dead by the end of 2018, getting his neck cut and runned over by a car. But they need Laurie to connect with someone, so he's fine. One of the best parts of Kills is the flashback to the original Halloween night, picking up right after the first ends and seeing how Michael was caught. It has this amazing recreation of the original movie's cinematography and atmosphere, along with great recreations of Michael and Loomis. But the Shape also just gets cornered and caught. No big deal. It undermines the original's ending of realizing he could be anywhere. But then the rest of the movie tries to elevate the killer back to a supernatural level. From a purely slasher perspective, Kills is giving a more hardcore horror audience everything they could want. This is a gnarly, hyper-aggressive movie with everything from Michael battling a firefighter team to extended one-on-one kills that are as gruesome as anything Rob Zombie brought to the table. Now, it's nothing new for a slasher to introduce new side characters randomly throughout the movie for the sake of kills and a higher body count, and that's what each of these movies really relies on throughout. It's just that Green relies really heavily and really obviously on what I like to call the Jeff Winger pencil principle.
I can pick up this pencil, tell you its name is Steve, and go like this. Oh. And part of you dies. Just a little bit on the inside.
It's the same thing every time. Cut to a new home and characters, give them a hyper-specific interest that they talk at length about, banh mi, dance, spooky records, indoor drones, and then have Michael brutally murder them. Repeat ad nauseum. It gets very obvious very quickly and very stale very fast. Kills climaxes with the Shape killing Cameron and his dad Lonnie. He of, "Lonnie, get your ass away from there." Sorry, gotta get my Donald Pleasance impression in. It's tradition. Speaking of tradition, here's Busta.
Trick or treat, motherfucker.
Oh, sorry. Anyway, with Karen luring Michael into the middle of the mob, where a bunch of schmoes in PJs shoot, beat, and stab him to death while Laurie, not for the first or last time, waxes poetic about the nature of evil. But Michael's stronger than ever, gaining power from the town itself, giving into darkness, wiping out the mob and killing Karen in the film's final moment. Simply put, Halloween Kills is a really weird movie. One that I like a little more with rewatches, but a film that splits its focus between so many different ideas, themes, and tones as it attempts to capture an entire town's reaction to pure evil unleashed that it can never fully decide on what it's trying to say or who its story is about. Despite being released with the COVID-19 pandemic still in full swing, theaters barely back open, and the film simultaneously releasing to stream on Peacock, Halloween Kills was a solid hit, making $133 million against its $20 million budget and giving Green & Company the chance to move forward with their slightly delayed trilogy capper and a film that, while promised as a fulfilling conclusion to the story, would be a massive departure in its focus.
Come on, let's go.
Halloween Kills so clearly sets up for a part 3 focused on the final fight between Laurie and Michael that same night. Who will survive? What will become of Haddonfield? And so, with Laurie hell-bent on revenge and closing in on Michael, Halloween night in Haddonfield comes to a close as... wait, what? 4 years later. She's making pies? So, Halloween Ends is a very massive swerve in what once seemed to be a very tightly knit trilogy, and Green makes this very apparent from the start as the film opens in 2019, 1 year after the events of Halloween and Halloween Kills, as we meet Corey Cunningham, played by Rowan Campbell, a babysitter who accidentally causes the death of the young boy he's watching on Halloween, Jesus Christ, in Haddonfield, a town that, by the way, seems totally fine to celebrate the holiday 1 year after dozens of people were slain and the supernatural murderer simply disappeared. Jumping ahead 3 years, Corey is ostracized by the town and begins a relationship with Allison, now living with Laurie as the two attempt to move forward from Michael and the death of Karen. Oh, and Allison's dad was also murdered in 2018, but fuck him. But when Corey has an encounter with the hidden and weakened Michael, the young man begins to be transformed into a new shape, intent on taking revenge against the town that hates him. So yeah, like, none of that was in the trailers. And that's probably for the best from a marketing standpoint, but it also made people immediately hate this movie. Is that hate justified when removing Halloween Ends from the context it was released in, and just watching it as its own film within the trilogy? Well, yeah, kinda. Halloween Ends was sold as the big climactic confrontation between Laurie and Michael after the end of Kills, and while that's technically here, about 95% of this movie is about Corey and Allison. Laurie and the Shape are sort of just the larger context of the story.
It's Halloween. We're gonna have a good time tonight.
Green & Company were clearly aware of how different Ends would be compared to the previous two, as they wink at it by using the font from Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. Haven't done a video on that one yet, huh? In the opening titles, hinting at the massive shift in tone. But instead of being inspired by that film, Halloween Ends actually has the most similarities to a completely different John Carpenter movie, Christine. Oh, and I guess John Carpenter as a character and a director actually exists within the continuity of these movies? I've done a video discussing Stephen King's Christine and Carpenter's adaptation, but for context, it's a story where nerdy high schooler Arnie Cunningham buys a possessed Plymouth Fury that slowly changes him into a cool, aggressive greaser that gets the girl, but turns evil because of Christine. That's really what Michael's role is here, the impetus of evil, with Corey even shoving him down and taking his mask at one point. Ah, geez, I hope he has life alert. Fully becoming the new Shape.
Just burn it all to the ground.
I like the match.
The most frustrating thing about Halloween Ends is not that it decides to do something completely different, or that it's a massive break away from the first two movies in this trilogy. It's that it's trying to have things both ways at once. Most of this movie is about Corey Cunningham and his struggles and the way he turns to evil, and I think that Rowan Campbell does a good job with this role, and I think everyone is doing the best with what they've got. From the very start of Halloween Ends, the entire movie is showing us that this is the story of how one man is slowly turned to the dark side because of a terrible mistake, and the way that an entire community turns all of their years of trauma in on him. Everyone is rejecting him, refusing to forgive him, and using him as a sort of scapegoat as Michael has disappeared already. Michael exists as the specter of the sins and trauma of Haddonfield now, instead of a straightforward slasher villain. Corey is now moving into that role instead. And by having Corey become the scapegoat for Haddonfield, they turn him into what they hate and fear the most. But Michael is also actually here and killing, not just turning Corey into a new Shape, but getting out of the sewers he hides in and showing the new kid the ropes. Just two buddies on the town having some fun together.
People, let me tell you about my best friend. He's a warm-hearted person who loved me till the end.
Worst of all is that while the film is naturally driving toward a climax that's all about Corey's rise as the new shape, he's unceremoniously shot up by Laurie and then finished off by Michael, who must have read the contract and realized there was only 10 minutes left in this movie, and Blumhouse wasn't getting the rights renewed. So the film quite literally looks at everything that happened in the last hour and a half and says, screw all that, we actually just want to have Michael and Laurie fight. It's a move that's clearly done for fan service, but it essentially makes the entirety of Halloween Ends pointless, because it's effectively saying that this isn't Corey's story after all. So then why'd you make me watch all that movie? Before all that, this is much more like a doomed romance, with Corey and Allison on the verge of becoming the Bonnie and Clyde of Haddonfield that she pretended to be on Halloween night with Cameron. Laurie and Michael are more like the older generation pulling them in different directions. Instead, we're much more focused on high school band bullies, workplace frustrations, and jerk radio DJs that spark Corey's wrath in secret as he and Allison grow closer. Honestly, we never once considered making a Laurie and Michael movie, said Green. The concept that it should be a final showdown type brawl never even crossed our minds. I wanted to see where it would go. I wanted one to win, one to die, but we were always more ambitious with that. So how did we want to go out? By doing what no one except us would do, make a love story. We made it about what can create the psychopath, without having to go into Michael Myers' psychological backstory. People have tried to do it, and it isn't interesting to me because it tends to make him less scary as an entity. But can we get into the development of evil? What a community that neglects the well-being of their own can unleash on themselves in a way they didn't intend? That's something that's fascinating, and I think it happens all the time. But just what the hell was Halloween Ends supposed to be when it was originally announced back in 2019 as a joint production? Some have said the original plan was for all three movies to take place on the same night. Others have said the plan was for part 3 to happen after a time jump all along. But really, what I think the truth is that there wasn't really a clear plan for part 3, which is why they didn't shoot it at the same time. The ending to Ends changed a lot too, with multiple endings written and shot. The original ending had Laurie just killing herself. Okay, whack. Another had Corey and Allison hitting the road as killers together. One had Corey ultimately rejecting Michael and returning to normal. Another had him stay as the new shape for possible sequels. And another had Laurie, after killing Corey and Michael, be possessed by their evil as the new shape, locking herself away to keep Allison safe. Instead, the chosen ending has Corey dead and Laurie and Allison killing Michael in a kinda underwhelming kitchen fight, with the whole town coming together to toss him in the local industrial shredder to make sure he's super dead. You know, someone has to clean that shit up in the morning, right? When looking at the reboot trilogy as a whole, I think that from a production standpoint, this is some of the highest quality work that's ever been done on Halloween. And the actors are doing great performances throughout as well. Curtis, Greer, Patton, Courtney, and Matichek are all doing fantastic work with their roles. Every film looks amazing, with cinematographer Michael Simmons shooting all three and providing each movie with a really gorgeous atmosphere that shifts from film to film. Autumnal spookiness in the first, a frantic and fiery feeling in the second, and a darkening coldness in the third. They're all also edited by Tim Alverson, who provides a clarity and pacing that creates both an intensity and moodiness that these films need for their storytelling. The intros for each are so cool too. A de-aging pumpkin, a parade of burning jack-o'-lanterns, and a pumpkin that endlessly grows new ones inside it all speak to the themes of each film. And of course, all three are scored by John Carpenter, Cody Carpenter, and Daniel Davies, who do wonderful work at expanding old themes with a guitar-heavy modern sound and adding new layers to the Halloween soundtracks that I think basically blows every previous film's score out of the water. Each of these movies can absolutely be enjoyed on just a technical filmmaking level or from an atmospheric standpoint. It's just that the writing gets really weak and obvious in the later two films, and the actual execution of each story and its themes relies really heavily on awkward exposition and thematic dumping from characters, while the trilogy as a whole can't seem to decide on what it's trying to say. Unfortunately, David Gordon Green's trilogy is worse as a cohesive three-part arc than when seen as individual pieces. And while the 2018 film is the easiest to appreciate on its own, Kills and Ends can't really be extricated from the other two, and they suffer as incomplete thoughts that find no real conclusion or meaning in other entries. Financially, Ends really had the deck stacked against it. Kills split audiences already. The film was once again released simultaneously in theaters and on Peacock, and the big departure of the story was absolutely going to create negative word of mouth. Still, Halloween Ends wound up making a total of $105 million worldwide. A drop from Kills, but still one of the highest grossing films of the franchise. And whatever you might think of these movies, I think that's the byproduct of the Halloween franchise becoming massively popular over the decades, people really hungry for some classic slashers in theaters, and the Green Trilogy having a certain air of prestige and hype around it that really brought a lot of people into theaters. Out of every Halloween movie, Ends has the most definitive, uncontinuable finale. And it definitely feels like Green & Company wanted to bring their story to a complete close. And yeah, that's pretty obvious when the film has Michael's body turn a bloody mulch with his head popped like a grape on screen. Definitely can't show that. Still, everyone involved seemed interested in somehow keeping the story going, with Green, Curtis, and Jason Blum all saying they were open to either sequelizing the story still, or simply resetting for a brand new one. But thank God that didn't happen, with Blum revealing that intellectual property rights had fully reverted to Malek Akkad after Ends, as was part of the deal. And in October 2023, Miramax had beat out Blumhouse and A24 in a bidding war for new Halloween installments. Never far from the franchise since The Curse of Michael Myers, Miramax shook up all expectations by announcing the next Halloween would be a TV show. Obviously, it won't be the first classic slasher franchise to move to television by the time it premieres. Chucky ran for 3 seasons, and at the time of this video's release, the Friday the 13th Camp Crystal Lake show is in production. But I can't help but feel a little down on this direction for Halloween. As for David Gordon Green, he went on to make The Exorcist Believer for Blumhouse in the hopes of spreading the same success with Halloween to another worn-out franchise. And this is, I guess this technically qualifies as a movie. After all these years, this is a franchise that feels like a big event every time it comes back to life. And even if the Reboot Trilogy squandered a lot of goodwill, I think that Michael Myers is too big of an icon to be completely tarnished. What will Halloween be like as a TV show? 13 episodes spread across one night? An origin story for Michael in his childhood? I'm not really sure, but I'm not all that excited about it because I don't think that classic horror movies being turned into TV shows are turning out all that well. So far, it's anyone's guess, but I think this TV show approach shows that Akkad & Company wanted to really move far away from Green's trilogy. And in looking back at the Reboot Trilogy, you can really see it as a solid idea for a larger story that fell apart in execution. As a whole, this is the massive story of a killer who once terrorized a town, returning as an unfeeling symbol of terror who drives Haddonfield to madness and, in the process, ascends to a mythic embodiment of evil, who then passes on that evil to the next generation, propelled by a community that can't stop the cycle. That's great in theory, but I think for all their big ideas that they can't help saying out loud in really long, unnatural speeches over and over again,
Fear. People are afraid. That is the true curse of Michael.
those ideas get really lost in execution as the story continues, pulled apart by scripts that are trying to both completely meet the demands of Halloween fans and subvert them at the same time. It's a story about overcoming trauma and the paranoia it causes, but one that also shows how our traumatized survivor was right to be paranoid all along. It's a night where the actions of an angry mob destroy the goodness of a town, only for that angry mob to finally put an end to evil once and for all. It's a finale where evil is shown to constantly take new shapes as the generations pass down hatred, only for the new incarnation to be killed off by the old and for evil to be killed once and for all. By the end, David Gordon Green's Reboot Trilogy isn't able to leave us with any lasting ideas, but its success and impact on culture proves one thing. Even after nearly half a century of horror, the shape is never far from our minds. Thanks for watching today's video, and the Halloween season is officially underway. And what better way to start it off by talking about Halloween once again. Hopefully by now you know that I've done a whole bunch of Halloween videos, and we're officially at the end of the Michael Myers saga with this video, at least for now. I've really been looking forward to talking about the Halloween Reboot Trilogy for a long time because I have a lot to say about it, so hopefully you enjoyed hearing those thoughts. I really do love Halloween 2018 and it's one of my favorites of the entire franchise. And while Halloween Kills got a little better for me on rewatch for this video, it's still a very mixed bag. And Halloween Ends to me is just a completely confused, mixed up turd of a movie. I get what they're trying to say, and I admire certain aspects of it, but as a film, it actually completely falls apart. And it makes all those interesting aspects earlier in the movie just not work at all. And in turn, this entire trilogy just falls apart. It's a shame because I think there was a lot of excitement for these movies when they were first announced, and a lot of goodwill ended up being squandered by the end, which explains the TV show. And I have no idea what that's going to look like or when that's going to come out, but I really don't need classic horror turned into television. As I mentioned in the video, there is one more Halloween movie that I'm yet to talk about, which is Halloween 3: Season of the Witch. I skipped that years ago in favor of going straight to the Cult of Thorn trilogy, and it's always been my intention to loop back around to that movie as a capper for this entire series of videos. And I think that will be coming at you next year for Halloween, along with maybe every Halloween movie ranked. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this Halloween Reboot Trilogy, how you would rank these 3 films, what you would like to see in future Halloween installments, and just what the hell they were thinking when they made Halloween Ends. There will be lots of Halloween videos this October, so get excited because I'm excited too. As always, a huge thank you to my patrons and members for their continued support, and if you'd like to be a member or patron, it's only $2 a month for early access to every video and exclusive reviews, with multiple exclusive reviews being voted on by my patrons and members for Halloween. So until next time, I hope that you're taking care of yourselves and having a happy Halloween.